Okay, let's get into the mailbag for the week. Many emails coming in over the last week. Only a few can be chosen. Remember, don't abuse info@davidpakman.com. Really, if you're emailing every day, we're not seeing your emails. They're getting filtered right into the trash. Actually, no, into a folder in case law enforcement ever has a concern about one of our viewers. It does happen. Many different topics covered today in the mailbag. Let's just jump right in. What am I even talking about? Let's start with a message from Peter. Peter said, don't underestimate Gazpacho. David, a number of extremist and conspiracy researchers have brought up the idea that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert's gaffes and spelling mistakes are perhaps deliberate ploys to spread their message further. It is something to consider, as every time they make one of these mistakes, it goes viral. Some point you have to wonder if they're doing it on purpose to get as many eyes on their underlying message as possible. We already underestimated Trump the buffoon. Let's not keep making the same mistake. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think it's completely reasonable to wonder about that. I think that there is no way to argue that these buffoonish gaffes are actually helping them build support for any of these things. I mean, the Gazpacho thing, sure. There are some Americans who have been sort of tricked or bamboozled into thinking that there is some kind of vaccine or mask Gazpacho, Gestapo. But they're not really falling for that. The people who believe that already believe it. I don't think pronouncing it as Gazpacho is going to bring people into the movement. So I don't think that they're that clever. I don't think that they're that smart. And even if it's what they're trying to do, to get attention, to convince people by saying Gazpacho instead of Gestapo, I just don't think it's working at the end of the day. And so I'm not worried about that. Joshua wrote in about Bob Saget. Bob Saget, the comedian who died not long ago. We now know the cause of death was some kind of trauma to his head. Later went to bed and died, presumably due to some kind of brain bleed that became fatal while he was sleeping. Joshua said, so now that Bob Saget's cause of death has been released, don't you think it's time for Candace Owens to go on TV and apologize for saying it was due to the COVID vaccine? Just a thought. Of course. Candace Owens, the right-wing provocateur, said in the days after Bob Saget's death, we got to be looking at the vaccines here. And it's not a conspiracy, she said. We got to be looking at the vaccines. And of course, there was no evidence that there was Bob Saget's death was related to the COVID vaccine. And there's no evidence that some of them say thousands, some say tens of thousands. Some of them are saying hundreds of thousands of people are dying from the COVID vaccine. There's no evidence of any of that. But someone like Candace Owens doesn't apologize. And if she were moral and decent, she would. But their whole movement, I mean, listen, Trump has never apologized for anything. Their whole movement is based on not apologizing, and narcissism, something very, very much present in Trump's personality, and I would argue to a great degree with Candace Owens as well. Narcissists don't apologize. They don't take responsibility. It's just what they do. And we need to understand that. Kelly wrote in. Kelly says, does religion make people susceptible to BS? Hey, David, hope you're doing well today. I'm a frequent listener, couldn't help but notice the craziest beliefs are often held by people who will follow their unhinged views up with a comment about God or some aspect of religion. You've shown many examples of this on your show. Do you think holding religious or supernatural beliefs leads to people being susceptible to believing other non-evidence-based views, stolen election or anti-vaccine? Let me know your thoughts. So the answer is yes. And I want to try to sort of be like respectful in some sense. And I don't need to make this about religion. Let me explain what I mean. We've interviewed on this show experts in cults, experts in conspiracy theories, experts in conspiracism, the psychology of cults and conspiracies, and on and on and on. And they have told us it is very rare that someone who is eager or susceptible to believe non-empirically based claims, like conspiracy theories, are rarely only susceptible to one. And so the example that's often given is we often think of flat Earth as this kind of benign, victimless, silly little idea. The Earth is flat and it's compartmentalized and that's it. But as our experts who we've interviewed have told us, and you can find a lot of these great interviews on our YouTube channel, on our website, a lot of the flat earthers also believe in, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that Jews control the world and have mass population control delusions, or whatever the case may be. And so we know that it's true. Now, it is up to you to decide whether literal religious beliefs like there was an ark that had 2 of every animal and they survived a flood that way. It's up to you to decide whether that's an equivalent claim, or God would never allow COVID to be created, so clearly China did it, or whatever belief. It's up to you to decide whether claims like these that involve religion are the same or not. It's not for me to tell you, but I think the trend we see is that when you are willing to hold or susceptible to believing one type of non-evidence-based belief, you're almost certainly susceptible to holding many of those types of beliefs. And there are such beliefs in religion that fall under that category. Steve wrote in. Steve does not like a phrase that I used. He says, "Hello, sir. I'm hoping you could either stop using the phrase, put a pin in that, or instead say, put that in a pin cushion. You don't put a pin in something to take a break from it. You put your pin in a cushion to come back to it later. Please do better," says Steve from Tokyo. Steve, with peace and love, you're wrong. You're wrong. The phrase, let's put a pin in that to temporarily stop talking about a subject, comes from putting a pin back in a grenade before it explodes. Okay? Now, I want to be clear. This is like couldn't care less or mine as well versus I might as well. All these phrases that people get confused. The idea here is you take a grenade and you pull the pin. Wow, the grenade is now going to go off. You've got to resolve that issue because the grenade will explode. So when you say, let's put a pin in that, what it goes back to is, whoa, we don't want this grenade to explode right now. We don't know we need this grenade. You put the pin back in the grenade. Now, many grenades, you can't actually do that, but the idea is we're not actually going to blow this up now. Let's put a pin back in it, and then we'll deal with the grenade later. That's the source of it, Steve. And I tell this to you with total peace and love. Now, is it possible that this whole, let's put that in a pin cushion? I've never heard that before. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it sounds like it's a different phrase. Okay, next. Charles wrote in and said, I'm running into a lot of pro-Trump propaganda on TikTok and on Instagram Reels. Yes, and I would go further. YouTube Shorts is a new vertical video TikTok type format. It is all riddled with right-wing propaganda. We are aware of this. We've talked to our YouTube rep about it. We've talked internally. In 2022, one of the things we're focused on is growing our TikTok following, using more of Instagram's Reels, which are sort of like a TikTok type format, and doing a lot of YouTube Shorts, because many of you have written to me and they've said, these formats are dominated by the right. So one of the things we've been doing, I'm taking a look at my phone here. We've been focusing on TikTok, where we are now up to 72,000 followers, 1.5 million likes. We're pushing TikTok big because it is a right-wing echo chamber in the political space. It's horrible. And you're absolutely right, Charles. We're going to keep pushing on TikTok Reels as well as YouTube Shorts. Okay, Sean wrote in about waning literacy in the United States. Sean says, Mr. Pakman, sir, the depressing level of literacy on display in your hate mail isn't limited to David Pakman Show rage watchers. Believe me, Sean, I know. Sean goes on to say, I've seen equally terrible writing in various corners of the internet that highlights social media posts from members of the right. The Herman Cain Award subreddit is an obvious example, but there are many others. I can appreciate that not everybody is a naturally gifted writer, but in a developed country like the United States, it's scary that so many adults have such a flimsy grasp of the English language. Has it always been this bad? And we're only now seeing it because people have more public avenues to share their written thoughts? Or are we just getting stupider? My guess is it's a bit of both. Either way, I only see the problem getting worse as people continue to demonize public schooling, teachers, science, and intellectualism. 110%. Beautiful email from Sean. I think there's two things going on. I do believe, I don't want to say people are dumber. And in fact, by various IQ measures, it's not true. But look at videos of, and this is always sort of fraught when you do this, and I know I'm stepping into a minefield, but look at videos of, for example, high school and college students asking questions to the late economist Milton Friedman. And you will see these, I'm not going to say the average student, because this is clearly a group that's interested enough to go listen to Milton Friedman. The level of how articulate these folks are and how well-spoken they are compared to what you see when Ben Shapiro visits a school and takes questions, it is night and day. So I think there is a change in terms of how we sort of expect people to communicate and grasp on language. I think that's a part of it. But the last piece of the email is also very, very true. The right has spent decades now demonizing public education, laughing off college as liberal indoctrination, and pushing this anti-intellectualism, all for their own benefit, because they know we're more likely to convince less educated people to vote for us because our ideas don't really make any sense. They don't say this, but this is my interpretation of it. So there is an education problem. It's a very depressing email that does point to some major, major issues that we are dealing with. One other email from Linda. This is another one of these phrases. Linda says, I could care less is a derivative of I couldn't care less. The latter is a direct statement. The former is sarcasm, as if is implied. As an old person, I remember when people started saying, I could care less. It was used only informally and was considered funny. You had to stop to think and realize they were saying the opposite of what they meant. Early on, some people would include the as if, as in, as if I could care less. I think like most ironic expressions, it was started by some comedian. The humor went stale, it sounds stupid. People who use it will correct it if necessary for non-fluent speakers of English. So they know it's ironic or say it out of habit. If some young journalist wanted to research this, they could start with stand-up comedy in the 60s and 70s. I had not heard that. If this is true, I as far as I know, the phrase is I couldn't care less. And when people say I could care less, they just don't understand it. Linda's saying there is a historical basis for I could care less, and it was meant in jest to mean the opposite of what is said. Maybe. I have not researched it. I will look into it. Last email today, Cedric says, Dear David, I heard the booster shot enlarges the prostate in black men. Is that true? I am an African-American male. Cedric, I researched this and found nothing of the sort. I found nothing that the vaccine affects prostate size in any man, never mind specifically in black men. Check with your doctor if you have any doubts, but I was able to find no such information. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today. Sign up at joinpakman.com. You'll get instant access to the bonus show. You'll also get commercial-free audio and video streams of the show available every day, 6 hours before the shows are publicly made available. Sign up today, and you can use the coupon code WOW22 to get a discount.